something fundamental has shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with cold precision. What once looked like attraction is now strategy. What once felt like connection is now calculation. Behind closed doors, a different game is being played, one where emotions are filtered, risks are measured, and choices are no longer made by the heart alone. In this video, you will uncover why stability has quietly become more attractive than passion, the psychological mechanism driving women toward established men, and the hidden trade-offs redefining modern relationships. Stay until the end, because what you're about to understand will permanently change how you see attraction, power, and the true nature of choice. There is a narrative most people still believe, that attraction is spontaneous, that love is organic, that relationships are built on emotional connection, but reality has evolved faster than that story. In 2026, relationship decisions are increasingly shaped by economic volatility, social competition, and long-term security awareness. This doesn't eliminate emotion, it restructures it. At the core of this shift lies a simple principle. The human mind is not designed to chase uncertainty indefinitely, especially when the stakes are high. Younger men often represent potential without guarantee, ambition without structure, identity still in formation, signals that translate psychologically into instability, delayed rewards, and emotional unpredictability. The brain reads this as risk. Now contrast that with an established man. Predictability, proven competence, social validation. These signals reduce anxiety, lower cognitive strain, and increase perceived safety and long-term clarity. This is not merely attraction, it is alignment with stability. But it goes deeper. An established partner does not just offer stability, he compresses time. Access to networks, opportunities, and social positioning becomes immediate. What might take years independently can be accessed within months, creating a powerful shift in trajectory. The thrill of unpredictability, often mistaken for passion, is neurologically tied to dopamine fluctuations and emotional highs and lows. But over time, it leads to exhaustion, instability, and lack of control. As awareness increases, the mind begins to favor consistency over intensity, clarity over chaos. This is not the death of attraction. It is its evolution. Every decision carries a cost. And here the trade-off becomes clear. Excitement is exchanged for stability, uncertainty for predictability, emotional spikes for long-term positioning. This is not manipulation. It is optimization. And contrary to popular belief, the end game is not dependence, but sovereignty. By reducing risk and increasing access to resources, independence becomes more attainable, decisions become more controlled, and personal leverage grows. Over time, the individual is not defined by the relationship, but strengthened by it. What appears on the surface as a simple preference is, in reality, a deep psychological shift, from reaction to intention, from emotion to awareness, from chance to calculated choice. But this leaves one critical question. If attraction itself is evolving, what happens to those still playing by the old rules? The answer is waiting in the next video on your screen. Watch it carefully, because understanding it may be the difference between being chosen and being left behind. There is a quiet transformation unfolding in the way relationships are formed, subtle, calculated, and deeply psychological. What appears on the surface as a simple preference is, in reality, a sophisticated filtering process shaped by perception, risk evaluation, and long-term cognitive strategy. The modern woman is no longer navigating attraction as a purely emotional experience. She is navigating it as a system of signals, probabilities, and outcomes. This shift did not happen randomly. It emerged from a convergence of economic pressure, social complexity, and a heightened awareness of consequence. The result is a new behavioral pattern, one that prioritizes stability not as comfort, but as leverage. At the core of this transformation lies a fundamental cognitive mechanism known as risk assessment. The human brain is wired to constantly evaluate potential threats and rewards, especially in decisions that impact long-term security and life outcomes. When a woman encounters a younger man, what she is subconsciously processing is not just his personality or appearance, but a set of variables: inconsistency, developmental uncertainty, and delayed gratification. These variables activate what psychologists refer to as cognitive uncertainty, a state in which the brain must expend additional energy to predict outcomes. The higher this uncertainty, the lower the perceived stability of the relationship. In contrast, an established man represents a different psychological profile entirely. He embodies behavioral stability and social proof. These are not superficial traits. They are deeply embedded signals that reduce cognitive strain and increase predictive confidence. When the brain detects patterns of consistency, financial, emotional, and social, it shifts into a state of reduced vigilance. This creates a powerful internal response: comfort, clarity, and a sense of controlled trajectory. What is often labeled as attraction is, in many cases, the brain recognizing a lower-risk investment. Then another layer emerges, more complex and more strategic. This layer involves perceived time pressure. In a rapidly evolving world, time is no longer just a passive dimension. It is a resource that must be optimized. Waiting for a partner to become something carries a hidden cost. This cost is measured in missed opportunities, delayed milestones, and prolonged uncertainty. Psychologically, this triggers a shift toward immediate value acquisition. Established men, by virtue of their position, offer what behavioral economists call immediate return instead of deferred potential. This leads to a crucial concept: the trajectory acceleration effect. When a woman aligns herself with an already established structure, whether financial, social, or professional, she is not merely entering a relationship. She is entering an ecosystem. Access to networks, exposure to higher-level environments, and association with credibility all become instantly available. This is not dependency. It is strategic positioning. The individual is no longer building from zero. She is integrating into an existing framework that amplifies her own capabilities. At this point, the emotional dimension becomes essential, not because it disappears, but because it evolves. The intense highs associated with unpredictable relationships are driven by the dopamine reward system. This system thrives on variability, on the tension between expectation and outcome. However, over time, this pattern leads to emotional burnout and emotional instability. As psychological awareness increases, there is a natural shift toward patterns that provide emotional regulation, a state where emotions are not suppressed, but stabilized. This shift is not theoretical. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology examined how individuals make long-term relational decisions under uncertainty. The findings suggest that as environmental complexity increases, people are more likely to prioritize traits associated with reliability, predictability, and resource stability over traits associated with excitement or novelty. This aligns with rational choice theory, where decisions are made based on maximizing benefit while minimizing risk. Now consider the psychological trade-offs involved. Every choice restructures priorities. When stability is selected, it often comes at the expense of spontaneity. When predictability is embraced, intensity may diminish. But what emerges in return is something far more sustainable: long-term consistency and psychological safety. These are the foundations upon which durable relationships, and by extension, stable lives, are built. There is also a deeper layer related to identity and self-concept. When a woman chooses a partner who is already established, she is not only responding to his external attributes. She is aligning with a version of herself that exists within that environment. This is known as identity alignment. The relationship becomes a mirror reflecting a desired future state, reinforcing behaviors and decisions that move her closer to that identity. However, the most misunderstood aspect of this entire dynamic is the end goal. It is commonly assumed that such choices are driven by a desire for dependence. In reality, the opposite is often true. The underlying objective is autonomy. By reducing exposure to risk and increasing access to resources, the individual creates conditions that allow for greater personal freedom over time. This is not about relinquishing control. It is about securing it. As the landscape of relationships continues to evolve, one thing becomes increasingly clear. Attraction is no longer a singular force driven by emotion alone. It is a multidimensional process influenced by cognition, environment, and long-term strategy. The modern decision-maker is not abandoning emotion. She is integrating it into a broader framework of awareness and intention. And this leads to a final, critical realization. If the rules of attraction have changed, if stability, predictability, and strategic alignment are now central, then those who continue to rely solely on outdated models of charm and spontaneity may find themselves misaligned with the current reality. The question is no longer who is more attractive, but who is more predictable, more consistent, and more capable of reducing risk while maximizing long-term value. Understanding this shift is not just about relationships. It is about understanding how human behavior adapts under pressure, how decisions evolve with awareness, and how power quietly restructures the way choices are made. And once this pattern becomes visible, it cannot be unseen. Before you scroll, look at what just appeared on your screen. Psychology of Woman Who Wears Neutral Colors. This isn't about fashion. It's about hidden control, silent confidence, and a mind that reveals less than it sees. Watch it now, and you'll never look at simplicity the same way again.